In the archives of American history, there exists a parallel narrative. Operations conducted in shadow, missions executed without public knowledge, decisions made behind closed doors that shape the world we inherit today. This is not a story of conspiracy. This is a story of classification, of national security determinations, and of operations that were deemed too sensitive for public consumption at the time they occurred. Some have since been declassified, others remain hidden still. "40 miles to the north, 9 American helicopters lift off from LZ Dadi. Inside, 100 men of Charlie Company prepare for what their commanders have told them will be a major engagement with enemy forces." By March of 1968, America has been fighting in Vietnam for nearly 7 years. More than 500,000 U.S. troops are deployed. The war, once sold to the American public as winnable and necessary, has become something else entirely.
6 weeks earlier, during the Lunar New Year celebration called Tet, North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched coordinated attacks across South Vietnam. Though militarily defeated, the Tet offensive shattered American confidence. The enemy was supposed to be losing. They were not. In Quang Ngai Province, an area long considered hostile territory, American units have suffered weeks of casualties from booby traps, mines, and sniper fire. They rarely see the enemy. They bury their friends. The men of Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Infantry Regiment, are mostly draftees, teenagers and men in their early 20s. Many have been in Vietnam less than 3 months. Charlie Company had suffered significant casualties in the weeks before My Lai without ever engaging the enemy directly. The psychological term for this is cumulative trauma. These men were angry, afraid, and poorly led. On the evening of March 15th, Captain Ernest Medina briefs his men for the next day's operation. Intelligence reports indicate that the Viet Cong's 48th Battalion, several hundred fighters, are occupying the hamlets around My Lai. According to a soldier's testimony, an excerpt from later testimonies, Captain Medina told us to kill everything that breathed. He said nothing living should remain in the village. What exactly Medina said that night will be disputed for decades, but the men who heard him understood one thing: they were going to destroy the village. At 7:30 in the morning, the helicopters descend into the landing zone west of My Lai. The soldiers disembark expecting battle. They find none.
No gunfire greets the American troops. The intelligence was wrong. There are no Viet Cong fighters in My Lai that morning. There are only civilians, mostly women, children, and elderly men. The younger men are away, some at market, some drafted into one army or another. Lieutenant William Calley's 1st Platoon enters the southern portion of the hamlet designated My Lai 4. They begin rounding up villagers. At first, some soldiers conduct searches. They look for weapons, for bunkers, for any sign of enemy presence. They find none. No weapons, no military-age males, no resistance. And then the killing begins. What happens over the next 4 hours defies military logic, rules of engagement, and basic humanity. It is not combat. It is not counterinsurgency. It is murder.
Army photographer Ronald Heberl is with Charlie Company that day. His camera captures what will become some of the most disturbing images in American military history. Women. Children. Bodies along a dirt road. On the eastern edge of the hamlet, there is an irrigation ditch. A drainage canal for the rice paddies. On the morning of March 16th, Lieutenant Calley orders his men to herd approximately 70 to 80 villagers into this ditch. According to the testimony at trial, Calley ordered his men to push people into the ditch. Then he ordered them to shoot. Some soldiers refused. Some obeyed. Calley himself opened fire. Multiple witnesses will later testify that the shooting continues for minutes. When it stops, Calley orders his men to check for survivors. When they find any, he orders them killed. The massacre is not confined to one location. Throughout the hamlet, soldiers commit atrocities. Women and girls are raped. Homes are burned. Animals are slaughtered. An old man is bayoneted while attempting to show soldiers his identification papers proving he worked for the South Vietnamese government. Not all the soldiers of Charlie Company participate. Some refuse orders. Some simply stand and watch, frozen. One soldier, Private Herbert Carter, shoots himself in the foot rather than continue. But the killing goes on. At 9:30 that morning, Warrant Officer Hugh Thompson Jr. is piloting a small observation helicopter over the hamlet. His mission is reconnaissance, to scout ahead for the ground troops and mark enemy positions with smoke grenades. But Thompson sees no enemy. He sees bodies. Dozens of them. He sees wounded civilians in the fields. He lands to mark them with smoke so medics can evacuate them. When he takes off and circles back minutes later, he sees that American soldiers have killed the wounded he marked for rescue. Thompson lands his helicopter between a group of soldiers advancing on a bunker where civilians are hiding. He turns to his crew chief, Lawrence Colburn, and his gunner, Glenn Andreatta. He tells them that if the American soldiers try to harm the civilians, they are to open fire on the Americans. For a long moment, American faces American. A 25-year-old helicopter pilot with a crew of 2, facing down an infantry platoon. Thompson approaches the lieutenant in charge and demands the civilians be allowed to surrender safely. An argument erupts. Finally, Thompson convinces a lieutenant from another platoon to help escort the civilians to safety. Hugh Thompson's actions that day were extraordinary. He literally put his own life, and his crew's lives, on the line to stop American soldiers from killing civilians. In that moment, he chose humanity over tribe. Thompson and his crew evacuate 10 civilians, including children. They also pull a 2-year-old boy alive from the irrigation ditch, clinging to his dead mother. It is the only child they can save from that location. Thompson radios his superiors and reports what he has witnessed. Within the hour, orders come down to cease fire. The massacre stops. Within hours of the massacre, the cover-up begins. Captain Medina orders Calley to submit a combat action report. The report claims that 128 Viet Cong fighters were killed in action. American casualties, 1, self-inflicted. The Army's official press release describes the operation as a significant victory. No mention is made of civilian casualties. No questions are asked. The story disappears into the noise of war. The Vietnam War produced so much death, so many operations, that one more reported battle didn't attract attention. The military command had every incentive to bury this. And they did, successfully, for 18 months. But some soldiers cannot stay silent. Hugh Thompson files a formal complaint through his chain of command. It goes nowhere. Other members of Charlie Company write letters home describing what they witnessed. Most families don't know what to do with this information. In March 1969, 1 year after the massacre, a Vietnam veteran named Ronald Ridenour sits down to write a letter. Ridenour had not been at My Lai, but he had heard detailed accounts from soldiers who were. The stories haunted him. Ridenour sends his letter to President Nixon, the Pentagon, the State Department, and 30 members of Congress. The letter is detailed, naming names, describing atrocities. It cannot be ignored. The Pentagon launches an investigation. In November 1969, journalist Seymour Hersh breaks the story in the press. Within days, Ronald Heberle's photographs appear in Life magazine and newspapers around the world. The reaction is immediate and explosive. America is forced to confront a terrible question: what have we become? The Army convenes the Pierce Commission, led by Lieutenant General William Pierce. For 4 months, investigators interview over 400 witnesses. The final report is devastating. The Pierce Commission didn't just document the massacre. It documented the cover-up. It showed that officers at multiple levels knew what happened and chose to conceal it. That was almost as damning as the killings themselves. 26 soldiers and officers are charged with criminal offenses or with participation in the cover-up. The cases begin to move toward court-martial. And then, one by one, the charges are dropped or the accused are acquitted. In the end, only one man is convicted. Lieutenant William Calley Jr. is found guilty of the premeditated murder of at least 22 civilians. He is sentenced to life in prison with hard labor. The Calley verdict divides America. Some see justice served. Others see a scapegoat, a junior officer punished while his superiors walk free. Opinion polls show that nearly 80% of Americans disagree with the verdict. The Calley case became a Rorschach test for how Americans viewed the war. Was he a war criminal or a product of an impossible situation? The debate revealed how fractured the country had become. President Nixon intervenes. He orders Calley released from the stockade to house arrest while appeals proceed. 3 years later, in November 1974, Calley is paroled. He serves 3.5 years total, most of it in a comfortable apartment at Fort Benning. No one else ever serves time for My Lai. For decades after My Lai, Hugh Thompson is vilified by some as a traitor who pointed guns at fellow Americans. He receives death threats. His military career stalls. He struggles with what he witnessed. Hugh never considered himself a hero. He said he just did what was right. But it cost him. People called us traitors for years. In 1998, 30 years after My Lai, the Army awards the Soldier's Medal to Hugh Thompson, Lawrence Colburn, and posthumously to Glenn Andreatta, who died in combat 3 weeks after the massacre. It is the Army's highest award for bravery not involving conflict with an enemy. I'm not a hero. The heroes are the people who stood their ground in those bunkers. Today, in the hamlet once called My Lai 4, there stands a memorial. It lists 504 names. The youngest was 1 year old. Visitors come from around the world. Vietnamese families bring flowers for ancestors. American veterans come seeking some form of reconciliation. Students come to learn. The My Lai massacre changed how America trains its soldiers. The military now emphasizes rules of engagement and the laws of war. Officers learn about the importance of moral courage and the duty to refuse illegal orders. My Lai is taught at every service academy, every officer training program. Not to shame our military, but to ensure it never happens again. The lesson is clear: following orders is not an excuse for atrocity. The massacre accelerated the anti-war movement and deepened America's credibility gap with its own people. It became impossible to claim the moral high ground in Vietnam after the world saw what happened at My Lai. On March 16, 1968, the sun rose over Sun My village. By noon, hundreds were dead. By evening, the truth was buried. But the truth does not stay buried forever. The irrigation ditch is still there. Rice grows in the paddies. Life continues. But the names on the memorial stand as a reminder of what we are capable of, both our capacity for cruelty and our capacity, however rare, for moral courage in the face of evil. Hugh Thompson died in 2006 at age 62. Lawrence Colburn died in 2016 at age 67. Glenn Andreatta was killed in action on April 8, 1968. He was 20 years old. William Calley apologized publicly for his role in the massacre in 2009, stating, "There is not a day that goes by that I do not feel remorse for what happened that day in My Lai." The My Lai Memorial was established in 1978. It remains a site of pilgrimage and education. 504 names are inscribed on its walls. Do well to like and subscribe for more videos.